TFA fam, welcome back in. We are on to week 7 with 6 teams on bye this week. We're going to be having a lot of options from this list. You're going to be looking to play, especially at the flex option, because wide receivers are definitely your best. You're going to be your better bet this week because running back this week is a little gross. So let's go ahead and jump right into it and start out at our wide receiver ones. And they are Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown, Keenan Allen, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devontae Adams, Chris Olave, Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, and Puka Nacua. Cody, hit us with some of that wide receiver one goodness.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to put something out there that I'm really hoping that we finally get a fantasy bonanza type of game with the Eagles and the Dolphins. I just feel like there have been so many games this year that have disappointed. We've had some ugly games, a lot of low totals. So I just want to put some good juju out into the universe that one of these games with a high total finally pops off. We have 5 games with totals under 40. We have another 5 games with totals under 45. And this 52-point total in this game is by far the highest on the week. So I'm really hoping it comes through. And I know all of the Waddle and Devonta Smith owners have been waiting for the breakout. And I know I've also been saying that at least one of these guys is going to happen for them. But this really sets up as a fantastic chance for it to finally happen. So fire up all of your Eagles, fire up all of your Dolphins this week. Next up, I want to talk about Brandon Ayuk. With CMC and Debo banged up at best, this should set up to be a game where Ayuk is heavily featured. He's finished as a top 10 wide receiver twice this season. He leads the league in air yard share. He's 6th in target share and is 7th in depth of target as well. If he has this passing offense basically to himself outside of Kittle, he could absolutely smash here going up against the Vikings, who are allowing the 5th most half PPR points per game to the position. Another guy in a spot that I really like is Chris Olave. The Jaguars have given up the 5th most air yards on completed passes. Olave is 11th in air yard share, and among wide receivers with at least 15 targets, Olave is tied for the 9th highest average depth of target, and he leads the league in deep targets. So I think this is setting up to be a huge game for Chris Olave.
Yeah, I really hope we see some bounce back spots here, because I think I saw that today it was like 56% of the unders have hit this year for the NFL. I think it's the lowest rate since 2020 or something like that. It's been brutal. Like, can we get some fantasy goodness? Like, it feels like every week there's a couple of players that go off, and then the rest of the bunch just absolutely just shits the bed. So it's been, if you're lucky enough to have some of those players that have actually went nuclear, you had a good week. If not, it was a rough go. So anyways, let's go ahead and move over to the wide receiver twos. First off, it is DK Metcalf, Mike Evans, Marquise Brown, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Tyler Lockett, Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin, Zay Flowers, DJ Moore, Amari Cooper, and Christian Watson. Cody, wide receiver twos.
Yeah, you're just mentioning, some bounce back spots, and I think this could be a bounce back spot for Geno Smith and the Seahawks passing offense in general. It has been a wild letdown this year compared to what they were last year. Kev, I know you were really high on Geno Smith. He was one of your favorite, later round quarterback targets for fantasy leagues to start the year. But if there's been a get right spot for them, it should be here against the Cardinals defense that is allowing the 5th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks, 7th most to wide receivers. So I really like the spot for both DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. I just want to throw a little note out there. There might be some excitement around Jackson Smith and Jigba. With having more wide receiver options this week, I wouldn't be in a hurry to throw him into your lineups. I think a lot of that came from the fact that the Seahawks are running way more 11 personnel than they had been before. Now, could that be a trend going forward with them coming out of the bye week? Sure. But I would wait and see this week just to see what happens with JSN, see maybe his targets and his routes run kind of go down. But just want to throw that out there. If you have to start him in a pinch for whatever reason, this would be a solid spot to do it. The only thing you'd be worried about is if the Seahawks jump out to a big lead, then they're not running a bunch of 3 wide receiver sets. But moving on to some of the other wide receiver twos, Christian Kirk. Trevor Lawrence is going to be hampered by this knee sprain. I can't imagine they're going to want him to hold on to the ball for a long time and allow those plays to develop downfield. And Kirk's average depth of target is almost 3.5 yards lower than Calvin Ridley. We had Zay Jones not practicing again today. And if we exclude week 1, Christian Kirk is wide receiver 12 from weeks 2 to 6. He's tied 10th for targets, and he's 14th receiving yards. And the Saints slot corner has allowed the most receiving yards from the slot So he's in another really strong wide receiver 2 spot this week. And then Zay Flowers. We saw him put up his best fantasy game of his rookie year this past week, ended up as wide receiver 15 and half PPR scoring, and he's clearly the only Ravens wide receiver worth targeting for fantasy purposes. His 29.4% target share is tied for Keenan Allen for 12th among wide receivers, and the Lions are allowing the 13th most fantasy points per game to the position, and that is despite having 4 games this year where they allowed less than 250 passing yards. So Zay Flowers is in another good spot here in week 7.
All right, let's go ahead and move over to the wide receiver 3s. And they are Deebo Samuel, Jacoby Myers, George Pickens, Drake London, Michael Pittman, Jordan Addison, Rashee Rice, Gabe Davis. Good to see Deontay Johnson back, who's expected to return this week from IR, Curtis Samuel, Jerry Jeudy, and Joshua Palmer. So wide receiver 3s.
Rashee Rice, we've been talking about him as a deeper option the past 2 weeks, and he's come through both times, so I've officially moved him up into the wide receiver 3 range. It is abundantly clear that he is the Chiefs' best option at wide receiver at this point. He needs to be featured more. We haven't really seen it happen, but with Justin Watson out with a dislocated elbow, this should help open up some more opportunity for Rice. Watson was part of the rotation at receivers for the Chiefs, which was resulting in him seeing about 20 routes run each week. The Chargers are allowing the most fantasy points per game to the position. We have a 48.5 point total, so I think this could be Rice's true breakout week. On the flip side of that, I guess we have to talk about Josh Palmer because Quentin Johnson is just on a milk carton out there. I thought we would see him more involved with them coming out of their bye week the week before, but apparently not. Palmer, however, has been solid. He has seen at least 7 targets and 60 yards in each of his last 3 games. The Chiefs have been really solid defensively, but like I said, with this total sitting at 48.5 points, now that total has been bet down, but it still is only a 5.5 point spread. So Palmer is definitely worth a flex spot this week. And then to talk about someone I'm lower on versus most weeks, it has to be Michael Pittman. Pains me to say, but he's going up against a Cleveland defense that has been one of the best units top to bottom all year long. The Browns are allowing the fewest fantasy points per game to wide receivers, the 3rd fewest to quarterbacks. They've allowed just 471 receiving yards to wide receivers on the year. And the next closest team is actually the Packers at 623. You may not have the luxury to sit him, considering we have 6 teams on bye week, but definitely do not expect anything close to the 9 for 109 that he put up last week.
Yeah, this Cleveland Browns defense has been excellent this year. I mean, they've absolutely shut down most everybody they played. They just really made the 49ers look ridiculous this past week. So, and I don't mind that call at all. I think I'd be a little bit lower than him than consensus. So, really quickly, I'll hit on a couple guys that I do like that are outside of the top 36 range. I think Kendrick Bourne here is somebody that we could definitely take a look at. Saw 11 targets last week. This is a matchup they're going to be trailing. The Patriots are really hurting in a lot of ways at wide receiver. And so I do think Kendrick Bourne, who's a player that a lot of people probably added this week, definitely should be on people's radars. I think he can play as a flex option. Rashid Shaheed also is another viable option against Jacksonville. He's coming off another big game. Finishes the wide receiver 12 last week with 85 yards and a score. We're starting to see Derek Carr start to throw the ball a little bit more, which is a positive downfield. And so that should open things up for somebody like Rashid Shaheed as they continue to try to get the ball in his hands. And then Jaden Reed, I think, is also an option you can look at inside the slot, really avoiding Patrick Surtain coverage. So Jaden Reed can see a little bit more opportunities this week against the Denver Broncos. So he's also somebody that I think that has played a lot, seen a lot of opportunities that you could take a look at here within this offense. And then I agree, Quentin Johnson is just an absolute nothing at this point. Just gets no opportunities. I think he saw 2 targets. Poetic Justin enough was targeted on that last play of the game, and where the ball was, and he was just bodied out of the way. Stephon Gilmore bodied him on the route and just came up and intercepted the ball. It not good right now for Quentin Johnson. So I'm not playing him unless you're absolutely desperate.
Yeah, the only other 2 deeper names that I'll throw out here, Wan'Dale Robinson. The Commanders have allowed the 3rd most fantasy points per game to wide receivers this season. Robinson is coming off a game where he caught all 8 of his targets for 62 yards. So especially in full PPR leagues, he's worth a look. And then Jameson Williams, he is more of a desperation flex play with having 6 teams on bye. He only ran 9 routes last week, which was the fewest among all of the Lions wide receivers. His floor is literally 0 but we saw what he can do on limited involvement. He caught 2 of his 3 targets for 53 yards and a touchdown. He's the definition of boom bust, but a week like this, beggars cannot be choosers. Josh Reynolds is another option you could look at because he's the clear wide receiver 2 as of right now for the Lions.
And with that being said, be sure to leave any questions or lineup decisions you have in the comment section below. We'll be sure to get to those. We will be going live Wednesday night to answer all your start sit questions, so be sure to jump into there. Other than that, hit that like, subscribe button, and we will see you on the next one.